Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Nikki Rinderer, and I am pleased and honored to serve as your worship associate today. Today is Youth Sunday here at Tapestry, and so as a result, I've been thinking a lot about our youth this week. You know, so much is going on in the world today that is negative, politically, religiously, interpersonally. There seems to be hatred and divisiveness everywhere. Some of it is global and abstract. Some of it is more personal and hits closer to home. One of my very good friends was one of the baseball-playing Republicans that got shot at this week. And I myself was on the receiving end of some very vitriolic postings online directed at my support for immigrant detainees, as well as my marriage with Barb. In the face of these kinds of things, it's all too easy to get hopeless. And I do often feel that hopelessness. I'm a news addict, which probably doesn't help matters much. But then I come to our caring community here at Tapestry, and I see all the wonderful young people here, and my hope returns. These young people, are the hope of the future, not just our future, but the future of the world. A lot rests on your shoulders, you guys, but by the looks of it, you're up to the challenge. I'm so glad to be a part of the community, and if you, like me, have been looking for a congregation where your children are taught about love and compassion and respect, where your doubts are respected, your griefs are comforted, your joys are celebrated, your concerns are shared, your reason is honored, and your need to serve others is fostered, then perhaps you too have found a home. Welcome to Tapestry, a Unitarian Universalist congregation.
Good morning. My name is Noah Gothard. Some of you know me, and many of you do not. I've been a part of the Tapestry family ever since I was born. I have many fond memories of taking religious exploration classes, as well as Our Whole Lives programming upstairs at our old location over on Geronimo. But as I entered high school, I came to church less often than before, and there were some Sunday mornings when I just couldn't get up and I wanted to sleep in. However, I have been involved in the UU community. The last 2 years, I have been the communications director on our Pacific Southwestern District Youth Board. My position's responsibilities include managing the district youth Facebook page, as well as organizing Connections Con, one of our 4 district youth conferences throughout the year. Throughout my high school years, I have learned to appreciate this community. I feel replenished after each service, and my mind and my body are more connected to my own spiritual path. The reason I'm speaking to you today is because 2 days ago, I graduated high school. And I guess that gives me the credibility to speak in front of everyone. I am no longer a high school student. My parents are slowly learning to let me go, and this fall I will be attending Loyola University Chicago to pursue a major in advertising. But I'm not leaving yet, and today I want to share with you my interpretation of this month's theme, prophetic imperative. As I understand it, the prophetic imperative is our responsibility to project a vision of the future, of a better world in the future. My first experience with something like this started when I was in 4th grade. In the midst of the 2008 election, the state of California became divided over Proposition 8, which would not recognize same-sex marriage in our own state. My family, along with the members of Tapestry, were actively opposing the bill. We had dark blue and red "No on Prop 8" posters everywhere, and I went along with what my parents believed. At school, I had had a friend since kindergarten named Davey, and I knew that his family went to a different type of church, but we never really talked about anything besides Bionicles and basketball. One day, my dad drove me to my friend Davey's house for a play date. It was the morning after a storm, and his front yard was a mess. Amongst the debris lay a bright yellow poster with blue writing on it. I made out the phrase, "Yes on 8." I concluded that Davey's family had a different view on the proposition, and I still did not know exactly what it all meant, but I assumed that my dad would think differently about my friend Davy, or maybe even be mad. To my surprise, my dad just said, his yes on 8 sign fell over. And that was it. But looking back, I realized that my dad's simple response to what I thought would have been a much bigger argument was a message to me. He was teaching me to accept different viewpoints, but to hold true to my own beliefs as a vision for the future. He was teaching me that while there are 2 different sides and 2 different colored signs, as long as I fight for what I believe in, I will see the positive outcome. Even though Prop 8 ended up passing, we did not give up. I did not give up. My family, my friends, my religious community poured out our support for same-sex marriage for years afterward. One of my favorite memories was seeing our beloved Tapestry members, Matt and Eric, get married. And finally, in June of 2015, the Supreme Court ruled that the fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples. I was lucky enough to be, along with my family, at the General Assembly in Portland at the time of the ruling, and it was magical. Due to the momentous ruling, they changed the programming so that we were able to gather and celebrate and bask in the joyous moment. For the first time, I saw the prophetic imperative come full circle. Back in 4th grade, my dad taught me to have a strong vision for the future and to fight until that vision comes true. If we had all given up after Prop 8 passed, we may not have gotten to where we are today. And it brings me so much joy and peace knowing that my children will be able to grow up in a world where they can marry whomever they love. 2 years ago, I joined my high school's Model United Nations program. And I quickly came to realize that it was one of the best choices I've ever made. I learned how to research, I learned to communicate with other delegates, and to create plausible solutions for real-world problems. Each semester, we attended 3 or 4 conferences around Orange County where we discussed current issues on the UN agenda. Among those conferences, I've been a part of committees such as UNICEF, ECOSOC, and Ad Hoc Terror. Some issues I have discussed with other students range from women's access to healthcare in Mexico, genetically modified organisms in Central America, and cyber terrorism in Iraq. Whether we've known it or not, my fellow MUN students have played a huge part in the concept of prophetic imperative. I mean, we are the next generation. And at these conferences, we're representing different nations from around the world, talking about our visions for the future and planning for a better tomorrow. One of the interesting things to me was seeing how religion plays a part in international relations and how to formulate a resolution to an issue that would be acceptable to parties with many different viewpoints. I've realized now that religion plays a very, very critical role in many people's lives on an international scale. I am very, very lucky and fortunate to have been a part of Model United Nations. Many schools around the country and around the world offer these types of classes, but many do not. I hope that students like me continue to be engaged in international discussion whenever they have a chance. Because we are the next generation. We can make a difference, and we have the responsibility to create our vision and to tell them to the world. Whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement, the fight for funding for reproductive health care, or immigration issues, my generation is ready and willing to tackle anything that comes our way. I am confident in myself that I can make change. I will utilize my UU values to express the need for change wherever it is necessary. I would like to leave you all today with a quote from one of my favorite artists, Bon Iver. Their humbling lyrics describe a vision of the distant yet ever-present future. And at once, I knew I was not magnificent. Hold far from the highway aisle, I could see for miles, miles, and miles. Thank you.
Since Noah was the only graduating senior that was available to speak today, I told him that I wouldn't leave him high and dry to do the sermon on his own. So I want to add a couple of thoughts to what he has already shared. It was incredibly interesting to hear your experience about Proposition 8 from a very young perspective and to see that kind of dramatic shift happen for all of us so quickly. Part of the message that I wanted to lift up is the emphasis on dialogue in the midst of difference. In Washington, D.C. this week, we've heard a call for a return to some civility in political debate. The call was for more respectful dialogue. It's coming from and targeted at elected officials. And the dehumanizing language within our national politics has reached a pretty troubling level. But politicians aren't alone in that vitriolic language. On Facebook, on the radio, even in our own Unitarian Universalist Association, folks seem so certain of their own answer that there's no room left for curiosity or dialogue. If there's no room left for us to talk or to make mistakes, then there's no room for us to learn or to grow. And that may be the most dangerous situation of all, a complete gridlock of ideas. Our youth have always been a helpful reminder of keeping an open mind, whether that's the virtue of their age or the fruit of our Unitarian Universalist religious education. It's hard to know. If we're honest, we don't have a lot of contact time with young people here at church. We get an hour, maybe an hour, on Sunday mornings when they come to church. Sometimes youth participate in conferences and camps, but not all of them do. Sometimes they come with their parents to church activities, but compared to school or athletics or their other activities, our time with them is really limited. And Unitarian Universalism is a very broad tradition, as you know. We could be teaching 1,000 different things in their classrooms. We try to touch on world religions and justice making and spirituality and Unitarian Universalist history and more. But if we're honest, they don't come away with an in-depth understanding of world religions. Most of them don't absorb a significant amount of UU history. But I am confident that we're able to instill in our young people an appreciation for our first and seventh principle. Here and in their homes, our youth learn that every single person, every soul is sacred. And they learn that there's an interdependent web that connects us to the core of our being. And those two principles are the foundation of how we try to live in the world. They guide us toward justice making, but not justice by any means necessary. Respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and respect for this interdependent web demands a higher road to justice. Those principles mean that as we struggle for good in the world, we also have to recognize and even embrace the humanity of those that we disagree with. Even more, we have to remember that at the end of the day, our connection to those people, those enemies perhaps, will never be severed. No matter the legislative outcome, we will share one economy, one ecological system, and one country. This journey toward justice is a long and bumpy one, And we can't afford to dismiss any of our neighbors, even those whose yard signs are a different color. Our faith calls us to speak out for justice. It also calls us to be mindful of who we're speaking to and speaking about. So as we set our sights on changing the world, let us remember to make sure we're changing it into a world that we want to live in. Let us remember that our neighbors are sacred and worthy. Let us remember, no matter how deeply we disagree, we are and we will forever be connected. Amen.